Listen, a hillside. Hundreds of men are gathered in the open. They have weapons in their hands, weapons most of them haven't touched in years. They're waiting, not for a king, not for an army, but for one man. He is standing on a ridge above them, and he is holding a ram's horn to his lips. And in a moment, that horn is going to sound. But before I tell you what happens when it does, you need to understand something. 3 days ago, most of these men didn't believe freedom was possible anymore. Some had stopped believing it was even worth hoping for. So this is not a story about a battle. Not yet. First, it is a story about a sound almost nobody expected to hear again. But before that, you need to see what happened behind a door you haven't forgotten. You remember the door, right? The one they knocked on. The one that never answered. But now the servants are standing in the doorway. For a moment, none of them moves. Then the younger servant steps inside. He is the same one who first said, "It's been too long." He doesn't scream. He doesn't run. He simply stands there, staring. Now he understands what the silence had been hiding. King Eglon is lying still on the floor. The older guard pushes past him and enters the room. Just moments ago, he was saying, he wants his privacy. Leave him alone. Now all the confidence has disappeared from his face. "Get the guard," he says quietly. Then louder, "Get everyone." And the news spreads quickly. It moves through the palace like fire through dry grass. First, it's a whisper, then a shout, then chaos. Servants run through the corridors. Guards rush from their posts. For 18 years, the palace had never needed to move this fast. But now everything has changed. And by the time the alarm reaches the palace gates, the man who did this is already gone. He is already across the Jordan, already climbing toward the hill country, already moving toward a trumpet he hasn't blown yet. News travels strangely in a nation that has become used to bad news. First, it moves slowly. Then suddenly it spreads everywhere. It crosses the Jordan before Ehud does. Traders carry it. Moabite messengers carry it. Anyone who has heard it carries it. And eventually, the news reaches Rifa. He is working in his field when he sees a neighbor running toward him. The man is out of breath. His words come out quickly. Eglon is dead. Rifa stops working. The man repeats himself. Eglon, king of Moab, dead. For a moment, Rifa doesn't move. 18 years is a long habit to break with just one sentence. Then his daughter comes running out of the house. She heard the noise. Now she stands beside her father, looking up at him. "Papa, what is it?" Rifa looks down at her, and he remembers something. Years ago, she had stood at this same gate and asked him, "Will they always rule over us?" Back then, he had no answer. But now, for the first time, he has an answer that isn't just hope. "Get your mother," he says. "Something is happening." Have you ever heard news so big that you didn't believe it at first? Not joy exactly. Something closer to disbelief. When you've been disappointed too many times, you learn not to celebrate too quickly. That's where Israel is right now. They're not celebrating yet. They're just listening. Listening harder than they have in years. Ehud doesn't stop moving. Not since he walked away from the palace. He crosses the Jordan. Then he climbs into the hill country of Ephraim. And somewhere along that road, something changes. The fear that followed him for 3 sleepless nights is still there. But now it's getting quieter. The hardest part is behind him. And for the first time in days, Ehud can breathe. He isn't alone for long. A young man catches up with him on the road. Call him the same nephew who once saw Ehud sharpening a blade in the dark. He's older now, and he has heard the news like everyone else. In pieces. "Is it true?" he asks. "What they're saying about the king?" Ehud doesn't answer immediately. Then he says, "I need men. Everyone who can still carry a weapon. Everyone who remembers what it felt like before Moab." The young man looks at his uncle's hands. The same hands he once watched shake in the dark. But they aren't shaking now. "I'll go tell them," he says. Then he turns, and runs. The news reaches the village faster than anyone expects, and among the men who come out to listen is Shamir. He's older now, slower too. He still has the same broad shoulders, the same loud presence, but something has changed in his face, because when he hears who is calling the men together, he remembers the caravan. He remembers the laughter that once cost him nothing. He doesn't say anything about it. Instead, he picks up a weapon he hasn't touched in years. Then he falls into line with the others. Nobody asks him to explain himself. Nobody needs to. Sometimes the truest apology a person can give is simply showing up and doing what needs to be done, even when the person leading them is someone they once refused to take seriously. You know this feeling too. The moment someone you once doubted turns out to be exactly the person who was needed. And sometimes the humbling part isn't saying, "I was wrong." Sometimes it's simply following them and letting your actions say it for you. Ehud climbs to a ridge overlooking the men below. Farmers, fathers, young men who are barely old enough to remember freedom, and older men who remember it so well, they're afraid to believe it's coming back. Men like Rifa are there too. He left his field as soon as he heard the news. Ehud looks down at them. Then he lifts the ram's horn to his lips. For one breath, he hesitates. But this time it isn't fear. It's the weight of the moment. Because the last time so many people looked to one man for deliverance, it didn't end in freedom. It ended with 18 years of silence. Ehud takes a breath. Then he blows the trumpet. The sound travels across the hills. Long, low, unmistakable. Below him, men who haven't stood fully upright in front of anyone for 18 years straighten their backs. Then Ehud calls out, "Follow me. The Lord has delivered your enemies into your hands." For a moment, nobody moves. 18 years is a long habit to break. Then one man steps forward, then another, and suddenly, they all move. They move toward the fords of the Jordan. These are the crossing places, the narrow paths Moab's soldiers will have to use if they try to escape back across the river. Israel gets there first, and the battle that follows isn't the main part of this story. The Bible gives it only a few verses. 10,000 Moabite soldiers are defeated. None of them escape. But what matters more is what happens afterward. Rifa is there. He left his field the moment he heard the trumpet. Shamir is there too. He's fighting beside men half his age. And somewhere among the younger fighters is Ehud's nephew. He's following orders from the uncle he once thought was cursed. Then the fighting ends. Moab is defeated. The Jordan becomes quiet again. And there is no great parade. No monument. No grand celebration. Just tired men walking home, carrying weapons they may never need again. The Bible tells us what happens next in just one sentence. The land had rest for 80 years. 80 years. That's not a headline. It's not a celebration. It's simply ordinary life returning. Rifa's daughter grows up. She gets married. Then she has children of her own. And those children never see a Moabite tribute collector walk through their gate. Sometimes she tells them a story about a night when she once asked her father, "Will they always rule over us?" And she tells them what he said. But she doesn't tell it like a history lesson. She tells it like something that still matters to her. And somewhere in that same village, the old blacksmith is still alive. The same man who once made a blade in silence. The same man who never asked Ehud why he needed it. Eventually, he hears what the blade was for. He never asks Ehud about it. He doesn't need to. He simply nods. The same way he nodded that night when he handed over the blade. Then he turns back to his fire. And Ehud? The Bible doesn't tell us much about what happened to him after this. There is no coronation, no great monument, no long story about his old age. Just his name, listed among the judges of Israel. And then, 80 years of peace, an ordinary peace that followed him. Think about that. The man who ended 18 years of oppression doesn't get a monument. He gets 80 years where people don't need him to be a hero anymore. Maybe you know that feeling. The quiet relief when a difficult season finally ends. No applause. No celebration. No one telling you how amazing you were. Just an ordinary Tuesday. An ordinary day that is finally allowed to be ordinary. And maybe that's not a smaller victory. Maybe that's the whole point. Remember the hand. The one they laughed at. The one no guards searched. Because nobody expected anything from it. For 30 years, that hand was something Ehud had to explain. Something he had to work around. Something other people had decided was useless. But that same hand was the hand God used to change everything. The crown was never the blade. It was never the trumpet either. It was the hand. The hand they overlooked. The hand God didn't. Ehud isn't remembered the way some people are. No colorful coat. No wrestling match with an angel. No towering statue built in his honor. Just a name in a book of Judges. A man the story almost forgot to name. But dust remembers everything. And somewhere in Israel's memory, 80 years of peace carried his name quietly forward. Long after the parades that never happened. Maybe that's the truest kind of crown there is. The one nobody throws a party for. The one that simply holds. If Ehud's story moved you, the fear, the forging, the door, the trumpet, subscribe so you don't miss who gets their chapter next. And tell me, what's the ordinary piece you're still waiting for? Crowns in the dust. Where the forgotten ones finally get their chapter.